Thank you, Darren, for your introduction. Firstly, I'd like to extend a thank you from on behalf of Cattle Council and myself for the invitation here today to speak. Rob is a great contributor to the Committee on Cattle Council, and thank him for his invitation, and also the Meyer family for this wonderful complex that we're all enjoying today. I wish I had this at home for my bull sale. Just like to start off. I'll just click that. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm a I think I'm under control now. I'm a seed stock and grass-fed beef producer from Wagga Wagga in New
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we'll see how this one goes. Touch wood, this one works fine. So, yes, just recapping introduction of myself. I'm a testing. Right, my 15 minutes is done, so thank you very much, everybody. Start again. Seed stock commercial beef producer from southern New South Wales. I'm currently an independent board director of Cattle Council Australia, representing Southern Australia. I'm chairman of PCAS within Cattle Council, the pasture-fed cattle assurance system, and a member of the MMAT subcommittee within Cattle Council, which is the marketing and market access and trade subcommittee. 5 years ago, I, like many producers in this country, knew absolutely nothing about representation, how to get involved, and how to have a voice within industry. I knew nothing. You know, what is CCA? MLA just runs everything, don't they? What is RMAC? Had no idea what RMAC was. And as a producer, how can I actually have a voice in the industry in an industry that I'm committed to for the rest of my life? And what role do state farming organisations play? I couldn't put any of this together in my head, so I decided to become involved. How I got involved, I joined the Rising Champions program, which is a program run by Cattle Council, which fosters young people under the age of 35 to understand the industry and understand how representation happens and all the multitude of decisions that has to be made throughout the representative structure of our beef industry. I was lucky enough to be invited to sit on a subcommittee within Cattle Council, which is the marketing, market access and trade, which was a very interesting committee and still is a very interesting committee for me as a young producer to learn what actually is involved with negotiations at international level. From there I was nominated for a board position. I'm not a member of a state farming organisation, and Cattle Council has two positions on the board that are independently elected, one representing Northern Australia and one representing Southern Australia. So I was lucky enough to be nominated and voted on to be the Southern Board Director for Cattle Council of Australia. And I'm sure you hear all the acronyms in our industry, and I think I understand most of them now, but 5 years ago I had absolutely no idea. So this is the industry structure with acronyms there. So you see in that middle line that they're your peak industry councils, and that's where Cattle Council sits in that, representing grass-fed beef producers. So moving across the screen, you've got the Australian Live Export Council, Australian Meat Industry Council, Australian Lot Feeders Association, which we're getting a presentation here too from today, Cattle Council, Sheep Meats Council, and the Goat Industry Council. So that's the peak industry council. So that's where Cattle Council sits into the entire structure of the representative model. On top of those, you have service providers providing each one of those specific sectors. And you'll notice MLA, servicing Alpha, Cattle Council, Sheep Meat and Goats Meat. and you've got Live Corp servicing ALEC, and Australian Meat Producers servicing AMEC. So you have peak councils, you have service providers on top of that. So just to simplify this really quickly, and then you have RMAC below. RMAC is represented from all the peak industry councils, and RMAC is designed to give a united voice, and everyone sits around the table and speaks. But we are receiving a presentation from RMAC today, so I won't go into that. So Cattle Council, who are we? Cattle Council represents grass-fed levy payers. Cattle Council has 4 core functions: advocacy, strategic planning, industry management, and strategic policy development. Cattle Council's current representation is made up of a board of directors from all states and territories in Australia. We have our president, Mr. Howard Smith, who is a Queensland beef producer. We also have 8 representatives from state farming organisations, nominated by state farming organisations, that sit on the board. So there they are listed. So for your particular state, if you could quickly just look and see who your representative is. And then down the bottom you have Mr. David Hill, who's the Northern Independent Director, not a member of a state farming organisation, and myself, representing the southern area of Australia. Cattle Council currently has 4 subcommittees, which are involved in the policy direction of the Cattle Council Board and give policy direction to the board. These committees were established in 2013 and ratified in 2016 to be in line with the 4 pillars of the Meat Industry Strategic Plan, MISP, and the Beef Industry Strategic Plan, BIS 2020. The first of these committees is Animal Health, Welfare, Biosecurity and Environment. This committee covers such areas as emergency animal diseases, FMDs, general welfare issues, JBAS, and the sustainability framework. We have Research, Development and Adoption Committee, which is Pillar 2, which covers areas such as Northern, Southern and Western Australian research corporations, the Red Meat Partnership through extension projects, genomic implementation and general technology uptake from a policy level. Then we have Marketing, Market Access and Trade, which represents Pillar 3 of MISP. This covers areas such as FTA negotiations, EU Task Force, Brexit, Live Export Protocol, 5 Nations Beef Alliance and Beef Import Protocols that have currently been in the news. Then we have Industry Systems and Food and Safety, which are residue issues, NLIS, Livestock Data Link, which was touched on by Richard, AusMeat Language and Standards, which is Cattle Council is a representative on that committee, and objective measurement through technology and rollout to industry. So there's the 4 key pillars that the committee base for Cattle Council are structured. The committees are made up of 10 to 12 industry representatives. The committees have a mixture of member representations and skills-based appointments. Representatives are made up of Cattle Council members who apply to sit on the committee that interests them. There is also skills-based appointments which currently include meat scientists, processors, breeders, exporters and various other beef industry stakeholders and experts. The committees are appointed by the Cattle Council Board and cover a vast knowledge base and give great direction to the board from industry as a whole. To become a member of these committees, anyone can become a member, so you can get involved in the industry and get involved in Cattle Council and the Peak Industry Council through these committees and have your say that way. You don't have to be a member of a state farming organisation. You can nominate yourself or get someone to nominate you and join up and have your say. And like me 5 years ago, if you are like that and knew absolutely nothing about it, it's a great way to get your foot in the door to becoming a representative of the beef industry. So key achievements over Cattle Council in recent times is the PCAS program, which is driving a standard for all grass-fed producers and grass-fed branded products. PCAS is currently utilised by 2 major processors in the country, but a great thing about PCAS is, and being driven by Cattle Council, is Cattle Council represents all grass-fed producers, so So it doesn't matter if other programs other processors are using their own programs. They can the standard for industry is driven by PCAS, and other programs are leveraged off PCAS. The Rising Champions Initiative, which is a program developed by Cattle Council to foster people under the age of 35. It brings people together to form an alumni of like-minded people. You don't have to be a producer, just involved in the beef industry, and you get an insight into how representation works within the beef industry. You get exposed to Canberra, you get exposed to industry leaders in all fields, and it's a great initiative that's really being driven and growing further. Another program offered by Cattle Council is the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, which is available to 14 producers Australia-wide every year, which is designed to give beef industry leaders the insight in and corporate governance experience to drive the industry into the future. So younger members of the community and older members of the beef industry certainly should look at this if you want to be involved in company directorship and or leadership roles within the industry, and this is being offered annually by Cattle Council. Other things are defining grass-fed in the Language and Standards Committee, moving grass-fed from a commodity product to on equal footing with any other beef, and giving its own brand name and own recognition within the industry, which affects all producers in Australia. And then numerous other things. An issue currently on the table with regards to importation of beef, just representative industry to understand the biosecurity risks and make sure that we're on the front foot with regards to that, whilst keeping in mind that we preach free trade and cannot just close the doors to things like that. But number one imperative is biosecurity. So there are a few key achievements of Cattle Council in recent times. What does the future hold for Cattle Council, which is a key question here of my presentation? Some current issues on the table: secure equivalent or greater access to EU markets in Britain through increased government advocacy. We've seen in recent FTAs with Korea, Japan and China that we have really got a good deal in the beef industry. And it's not just a Cattle Council advocating for this, it's an entirety working as a team all together, putting beef on the front foot, and beef has certainly got great exposure within those FTAs. So that's something we need to put the foot down on and continue with what's going on in Europe with regards to Brexit. Again, the implementation of objective carcass measurement, which what Richard spoke about here today. We have to sell this to industry, sell this to government, and make sure everyone within the in leadership roles understands what this is actually going to benefit and how this is going to benefit our industry. LPA expansion through the Integrity Systems Company, beef imports, which I've already touched on, levy process review from the Senate recommendations, and just basically talking to all sides of Parliament and understanding that Parliament can change. You're not got the same agricultural minister, you've not got the same representation all the way through. So we have to keep it broad and talk to everyone in every decision maker. So big issues that I'm sure numerous people have heard about here today is JBAS. I'm going to break from tradition here today a little bit and invite a representative, an advisor to Cattle Council on this issue, to come up here shortly and answer any JBAS questions. So if you could just think about if you've got any JBAS questions, we've got someone here that can answer all your questions. And also big issues facing Cattle Council right now is the Cattle Council restructure, so that'll be touched on. So I'd just like to introduce Mr. Justin Toohey. Justin is the Animal Health, Welfare, Biosecurity, Environment Advisor for Cattle Council. So if anyone's got any JBAS specific questions, Justin's your man. He'll give a brief summary on JBAS. And also I noticed on the way in that there's a 7-page template available to be picked up that is required. And Jen's got some copies of that right now if anyone puts that up. So I'll just hand over to Justin now to give a brief summary of JBAS.
I have to be gentle. We're going to try this one again, so I'm sorry if I drop out. Clearly, JBAS is inspiring a lot of questions, and I'll attempt to answer those later on when they come up. I can't cover them all in the brief time I have to describe what JBAS is, but let me give you a little bit of background as to how it was created. You will probably all be aware of the Johne's disease incident in Queensland, Rocklea, in 2012, that led to about 177, I think, properties right across Australia quarantined. At great pain to them and to many around them and their families and their businesses. And some are still struggling and will continue to struggle with that. So there was a lot of pressure put on industry and governments to review what we were doing around Johne's disease. Johne's disease was put forward through a study or commissioned by Meat and Livestock Australia as the 17th most important disease in production. So clearly it was way overkill. The issue, though, with Johne's disease, two things. One, we need to treat it like any other disease, so producers need to be able to keep it out of their herds if they don't have it. And second, it does have an impact on live trade. We saw that in Japan, where the Japanese shut down their market to Australian live cattle 3 or 4 or 5 months ago for quite an extended period. Johne's disease is mentioned in nearly every live export protocol we have from Australia. And we had to deal with those protocols. It's all very well to say they have JD endemic in their countries, but it's in the protocol. Many countries are doing what they can to control the spread of the disease, and they expect us to do the same. So with that in mind, we sat down with, I say we, a very large group of people involving vets, departments, industry people, scientists, Johne's disease experts, regulators, producers who were affected and producers who weren't affected, and spent 12 months probably over a series of workshops designing how we might best get out of the mess we're in. And two major decisions. The first was to deregulate and to have industry run its own programs if it chose to do so. The second was to see Johne's disease as Johne's disease, not as a C strain, which is cattle strain, an S strain or sheep strain, or a B strain, which is the buffalo strain. Prior to this, we were saying Johne's disease in cattle is the C strain and can't cross over. Same with sheep and same with the buffalo. In fact, 30% of infections in cattle in Victoria, in one of our programs we're running and monitoring, were infected with sheep strain. So there's very clear evidence and internationally scientific evidence that the sheep strain can affect cattle just as much as probably cattle strain can affect sheep. So we have to see Johne's disease on a property as Johne's disease. It's a bacteria, it exists. How we manage it across the species is different, but it was a very important thing to take note of. Now, out of all that came the need and a framework document and sort of deregulated system, which is available on the website. But one decision that was made quite early in the piece was that we had a responsibility for developing some tools to allow producers, if they choose, to help them manage Johne's disease, either spread from their properties if they had it or prevent it coming to their herds if they didn't have it. The vast majority of the beef herds in Australia don't have it. It's quite common in dairy, it's quite common in sheep, but not in beef. And so we just wanted a voluntary tool that individual producers could use, and hence Johne's disease beef assurance score, JD, BAS or JBAS. And the beef assurance score is identical almost in looks and numbers and ranking to the dairy score. Dairy have had theirs running now for quite some years and quite successfully. So we thought this was a useful way forward to provide producers with a voluntary tool. And it is quite an effective tool. I won't go into the details of it now, perhaps touch on it a little bit and wait for questions. But what threw a spanner in the works, without any doubt, is Western Australia and Northern Territory using JBAS as an entry-level requirement into their jurisdictions. We know that trade with cattle, where it comes to JD, is a herd-by-herd or property-by-property issue. So while the overseas protocols have JD mentioned, What they expect is the state government to certify properties, not zones, not states, but properties, individual properties. So it's up to the individual property owner to endeavour to keep the disease out of their properties. What WA and NT have done, at the request of their industry organisations, is create a wall that encompasses the entire state. Overseas countries don't care about the state being free of JD. This is the confusing thing and why we cannot quite understand why these two jurisdictions have done this. It comes down to property by property. However, to give WA their due, they have now started a surveillance program at $500,000 cost to support their claim of freedom within their cattle, albeit awfully late. And we just have to ride the storm for the moment, acknowledging that they'll only let JBAS 7 or 8 into their state. So with that in mind, I think we could probably pass to questions. I'm sure there'll be a few. If not, I'm very happy to step down.
The microphone, please, for questions.
Okay, thanks. The on-farm biosecurity template is there available. Please take one. There'll be discussion on LPA shortly. Within that, there's a spot where you can do a JD question optional at the end. That's part of the management of JD. And be aware that JD is like every other disease. You don't want pestivirus, you don't want tuberculosis. So understand these diseases and get on top of them and keep them away. Thanks.
Thanks, Justin. I hope that makes it clear. It's to summarise it from I'll put my producer hat on here now. If we want to maintain international markets, we have to be doing things and recording and have programs in place and have paperwork of endemic diseases like Yoni's. So. Yep, producer hat on. It just has to be done if we want to sell beef overseas. Can I quickly just go on to the next little section? Have we got time? 4 minutes. Okay. Proposed restructure for Cattle Council of Australia. This has been in the media recently and is something that the Cattle Council of Australia's board is firmly committed to progressing, and the structure to represent all grass-fed producers in Australia. So the proposed CCA restructure is a representative entity that is reflective of all grass producers, accountability through direct elections through its entirety, facilitate consultation direct from industry, and maintain oversight of levy expenditure by service providers such as MLA and AHA. 7-member direct elected board and the 2 skills-based appointments, policy development through a committee of 15 directly elected regional representatives, and committees continued as the current committee structure is focused on the 4 pillars of the MISP and BISP. So this is a summary of the proposed structure. I'm sure you've all seen it before. It's been out for quite some time. So you have a president, a board of 7, and that board of 7 is selected from the 15 representatives from each region that are voted on by grass-fed levy payers. So it's a pretty simple structure. It's designed to give a directly elected model and direct representation to the grass-fed industry. So again, I'd like to thank the crew here at Yugal Bar for offering me the time to speak here today, and I really look forward to the rest of the day. There's a tremendous lineup of speakers, and I'm going to hang around as long as I can because there's a lot to be learned. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Justin, for coming up here this morning. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people, whilst there were no questions here at the forum, at morning tea, lunchtime, I'm sure there'll be people that'll be looking to speak with you. And again, thank you for coming and representing Cattle Council here today. Thank you.